I'm Dr. Sheila Beasley, originally from Manchester section of Pittsburgh, and my story is about the East Liberty section of Pittsburgh. Manchester was definitely the beloved community. To grow up in the late 70s with the artisans and the music, it was fantastic. My elementary school was across the street from a Black Panther house, and I actually remember the after-school programs and the positive work that they were doing in the community. Even my elementary school teachers, the white ones, had afros with afro picks with the fist. So very culturally aware and heightened. But it wasn't until I graduated from the University of Pittsburgh undergrad and received my first job, which was in East Liberty. And when I saw East Liberty for the first time, I was in complete awe. First, let me say, I took the bus to go to East Liberty, 71C or something, and I took the bus to go to an automotive job at the Goodyear Tire and Rubber Company. And you say, well, you had a bus to take to get to the auto shop. I'll tell you about that more. But the apartments that I witnessed and on the bus ride, the apartments there were huge skyscrapers. They looked like the apartments that I only remember seeing on the opening and closing of Good Times, the show. I think they were called the Cabrini Green Apartments in Chicago. That they looked like that to me, and I was in complete awe, as well as the rich business district that was there. At that time, it was the sort of the twilight of the golden era of the big businesses that made Penn Avenue, where people had fine dining and entertainment. And it was just very fascinating to see that. But my job at the Goodyear Tire and Rubber Company, at first, when I went to interview, the manager immediately said, well, we can't hire you. You don't have a car, you don't have a driver's license. But I tell you, by the time I finished that interview, I made him a believer. He said, oh, I gotta find you, I gotta keep you. The job was in retail sales and marketing. And I guess he figured if I could sell him on hiring me at a job in an automotive shop with no car, then I had to have something that worked. And that definitely did work. It turned out to be the most fascinating experience because I was able to see what we'll call the old timers, people who were the original kind of pioneer movers and shakers of East Liberty at the time. The golden era, at one time, East Liberty was home of the wealthiest families in the United States, the Carnegies, the Hines, Westinghouse, etc. So it was considered downtown, East Liberty was considered a second downtown, and the rich and the established really made up the most wealthy population of a suburb in the nation at that time. I even remember them saying how the parade in East Liberty was so top notch it even beat New York and other cities. So it was a place that people felt a great sense of pride, but even more so a sense of community. And that's what the store allowed me to witness in the relationships between the Italian and Black Americans, families and old timers who would come in the waiting room and share stories about their experiences. And all of the guys in the service bay were Italian, and I was the only African-American woman. And they just really nurtured me. I did get my driver's license, and they would give me tips on how to drive. I remember one guy, Joe in particular, who was a dark-complected Italian man, and he would always joke, oh, kid, I get darker than you in the summer. And even at times when we'd have celebrations, they nurtured me. They celebrated my birthday with cake. But for potluck, they always had a special request for me to bring in collard greens, because they remember playing sports at Peabody with a lot of the African-American, the Black guys, they would say, and they missed the food. So, they shared houses. That's what it was like in East Liberty in those days. Just the residential community was so tight. And so I would bring the collard greens, and we'd have, great stories. But I remember even people like Mr. Ventos, who had Ventos Pizza, who, you know, again, is legendary in the city in East Liberty. He would have me come over at lunchtime, give me a glass of wine, and tell me stories about, you know, just the great relationships between Black people, Italian people. Everybody was just working and living and loving as one for the most part. So my place, the Goodyear Tire and Rubber Company store, was actually on Penn Circle, which unfortunately was one of the key locations that urban renewal destroyed with the construction. The homes were demolished, and so that spot, I found out, really became a special meeting place, and that the old timers actually loved to be in that space. It was familiar, it was comfortable. It reminds me of the Cheers, you know, the show Cheers, where everybody knew their names. The servicemen had been there for many years, and it allowed me to hear a lot of those great stories about those two, you know, ethnic groups just enjoying and sharing together. And even the Black, you know, elderly, the old timers, they would come in with special stories about the theaters that were in East Liberty. We had the Liberty Theater, there was the Regent Theater, which is now the Kelli Strayhorn Theater. And one story in particular stands out as one of the elderly men talked about, you know, that his mom didn't bring in, you know, didn't buy popcorn and all the concession stand food, that they actually had their chicken wrapped up in the aluminum foil and the plastic bags that, you know, were left from the bread. They'd have their chicken, and if they didn't have their chicken, they would go up to Isley's, which was right up the street, and get their chipped ham and match that with their bread and salad dressing, and they would get that into the theater. And then it was the pop. That was something really funny. And they talked about how their mother, whomever was taking them to the theater, would have the pop wrapped up in aluminum foil to keep it cool. And that would also be in their purse. So you hear the clicking going on in the theater. And I laugh because my grandmother did the exact same thing. You know, she had pop that was wrapped up in the foil. And, you know, it was just precious how, you know, people made things work for them, and just to be a part of those stories. It's sad that urban renewal had some displacement of those families and those people, but it was really great that the Goodyear Tire and Rubber Company allowed a space for people to still feel comfortable, still share. And I really recognize that, you know, from watching them and being inspired by them, that we truly are more alike than different.